What's up, guys? Welcome back to another week of the A-Game.
It's been a busy week for Mountaineer Sports. Stay tuned as we talk all things App State. Join us for our first Q&A game of this season.
Mountaineer Spotlight host Jay Boyd joins us in the studio again this week. And stay tuned to find out who will be crowned this week's Player of the Week.
I'm Gray Salter.
And I'm Austin Lopp.
And this is
the A-Game. Coming into last week, things were finally beginning to look up for Appalachian State men's basketball team. Sizzling from a 3-game win streak, the Red Hot Mountaineers turned their eyes to San Marcos, Texas, and the Texas State Bobcats on Tuesday. 23 points from Ronchad Shabazz couldn't make up for the 16 Mountaineer turnovers and a 55% shooting performance from the Bobcats, as the Neers fell 74-71.
Just 2 days later, the Mountaineers were back in action against the Mavericks of UT Arlington. Turnovers plagued the Mountaineers in Arlington and led to App State's second straight loss, 78-68. Appalachian State will be back in action at the Holmes Convocation Center February 16th against Coastal Carolina.
And Gray, throughout the season, App State's been able to excel in one place, and that's the offense. What are a few things you think about that?
The offense, I think they're scoring at a good rate. I mean, they're third in the conference in scoring, 80.7 points per game. That's a pretty good stat right there for them to have. The thing is a lot of their offensive stats are very middle of the pack. They're 7th place in assists, rebounding, offense, field goal percentage, turnover margin, and assist to turnover ratio. Overall, they're very middle of the pack in some of those things. So they come off of as this offensive powerhouse, basically, that really is good at scoring the basketball, but they give up a lot of points on the other end. They don't play a whole lot of defense. The thing is they're efficient on offense and they do put points on the board, but when you look at the individual offensive statistics, they don't really dominate in anything in particular, which makes it kind of interesting and almost a little bit inconsistent as to where they're getting those points from and how. It seems like they're going to a lot of different looks, and I think I would encourage new looks and new ways to move the ball on offense, but when you don't really have an identity to your team, sometimes, we talk about these road games that have been so hard for them to win. It's tough to establish that consistency for them on offense, I think.
Absolutely. I think when you're scoring that many points, it's easy to put a masquerade over your offense. One thing they haven't been able to cover up is that defense. They're actually last place in scoring defense, allowing 79 points per game. They're 11th place in defensive field goal percentage, allowing 46.5% of their shots to drop. So on that end of that's just not going to get it done. When you're allowing almost half the shots to fall, no matter what, it's just not going to work. They're 9th place in block shots, averaging only 2.7 a game, and last place in steals, averaging only 5.5 a game. So if you really look at it, overall, that defense is just extremely underwhelming, and we've been able to see it through all of their stats, through the way that their games have turned out, and pretty much how the season is turning out as well.
The thing that really stands out to me about the defense is the 3-point field goal defense.
Right.
They allow so many points from deep that they could have a couple possessions in a row where they play really solid defense, but then they'll let the other teams rack up a bunch of 3-pointers, and then before you know it, the opponents are right back in the game.
Right.
You also look at the fact it's great to average 80.7 points per game. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams aren't doing that. But you're also giving up 79 points per game, and a lot of teams aren't doing that too.
Yeah.
You consider that that's only 1.7 points in your margin there. All these games that they're playing too are pretty close matchups where
Absolutely.
At the end of the game they're either having to close, finish to win, or they're not quite there and they finish but they lose. And I think that margin you're seeing with the points there is definitely part of that. But when we look at the remainder of the season, Austin, for App State, they're last place in the Sun Belt right now. There's 7 games left. They do have a 3-game home stretch coming up. What do we kind of feel from them for the remainder of the season?
For the remainder of the season, I'm really just looking at momentum, trying new things, really just kind of getting everything out of your system that you want to do at the end of this season. Sitting at last place in the Sun Belt, you're obviously at this point not going to get a good seeding for the Sun Belt tournament. It's just not going to happen. So I think that we talk about it a little bit, just trying new things, getting some new guys in some new positions. But really, I don't think it's time to give up on that defense. I think that there's a lot of things that we could do, a lot of stats that they could look at, maybe even listen to us on the show here and listen to a few things that we say, because I think that there are a lot of things that would be extremely easy to fix and really good things to kind of start dealing with now, looking into the future as well. Anything special from you?
I would say I agree to continue to just I mentioned earlier their identity. I feel like offensively they score a lot of points and they have a couple guys who they give the ball to a lot, but they don't really have a system that they go to every time. You get a lot of different things from them, and I think that hurts them. If they can use some different lineup schemes and just different ways of moving the ball around to kind of find maybe a consistent pattern of scoring, I think that could definitely help them. And then, obviously the defense. I mean, the defense has to be improved. In that 3-game win streak that they had where they won their last game of a road stretch and then the next 2 games at home, they had 35-plus turnovers that they forced in those 3 games. You said last in steals, but if you can force 35 turnovers in a 3-game stretch, you're giving yourself a great chance to win those games. You're getting yourself extra chances to score, obviously taking away chances from the other team. If they can find a way to start kind of wreaking havoc like that again and really getting ball hungry, I think App State would benefit from being more aggressive on defense. Like I think they'd benefit from being overly aggressive, because right now they're being a little under aggressive. There's not enough fire coming from them. I think the more intensity they can dial up on defense, the better that's actually going to help them in the long run. They might give up some back doors here and there and some sloppy plays, but they're also going to force some big plays and drive teams crazy a little bit because of that aggression.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you mentioned, the turnovers. You have 35. You take the ball away 35 times in a 3-game stretch. You do really well. These last 2 games we lost 27 turnovers in 2 games, and
you don't win against the Mountaineers
right,
too.
Right, against
yeah.
exactly. So it just if you really flip flop and it's turnovers are extremely important, and I just think that there's a lot that we could do to end this season on a high note.
I completely agree. Yeah. When we come back, we'll talk women's basketball, tennis, and wrestling. Stay tuned.
Me and my boy Matt had it good. He had catnip that was off the hook. But one day, he brings a girl home, and she's allergic to cats. Every sneeze was a nail in my coffin. Now I'm in a shelter. It's decent, but they don't even have Wi-Fi.
The App State women's basketball team started the week off right on Education Day, beating Texas State 77-56 at the Holmes Convocation Center. The Mountaineers held Texas State's Tosahua Levitt, the Sunbelt's second leading scorer, to just 4 of 21 from the field. 5 Mountaineers scored double digits, including Maddie Story, who led the team with a game-high 17 points. Lainey Gosnell scored 15 points of her own, shooting 50% from the floor. App State is 11-0 when holding their opponents to under 70 points.
The Mountaineers suffered a tough loss against UT Arlington on Saturday, falling 72-65. The game was highlighted by Bailey Plummer, who earned her 3rd straight double-double, scoring 14 points with 17 rebounds against the Mavericks. App State will look to get back on track as they travel to Coastal Carolina to face the Chanticleers this Saturday.
The App State women's tennis team earned their first win of the season against Western Carolina last Sunday, defeating the Catamounts 6-1. In total, 6 Mountaineers picked up victories, with Kate Earnhardt and Rebecca Morse each winning their singles matches and their doubles matches.
App State men's tennis fell 5-2 against Richmond on Saturday. Mountaineers Alex Brea and Milo Bergeron won their doubles match 6-4, with Bergeron going on to win a singles match later that day.
App State men's wrestling started their week off right with a 21-14 win against Chattanooga last Sunday. The Mountaineers won 6 out of their 10 matches, which included major decision wins by Thomas Flitz, Kerry Miller, and Cody Russell. Mountaineer Michael Elliott closed out the day in impressive fashion, earning a takedown in sudden victory and clinching the win for App State.
The week was just getting started for App State wrestling as they traveled to Durham, North Carolina on Thursday to face the Duke Blue Devils. The Mountaineers earned a big win against Duke, defeating the Blue Devils 21-17 and winning 6 out of the 10 matches. This is the 6th win against a Power 5 conference team in the last 4 seasons for App State head coach John Mark Bentley.
After the break, we have our first Q&A game of the season, and Mountaineer Spotlight host Jay Boyd joins us right here in studio. Stay tuned.
Michael Elliott helped App State win against Chattanooga with his takedown victory that occurred during overtime. Years of preparation brought him to this moment.
I've been wrestling since I was 4 years old. My brother had started, and my dad used to wrestle back in high school, so that's why I started.
His advice to younger athletes is to keep in mind that there is no time to spare.
All right, so Valentine's Day is coming up. It's the season of love. What sport do you love the most?
I love football the most.
Tell us a little bit why.
You know, those men out there in football pants, doesn't get better than that.
I feel you. Who is your Valentine's Day celebrity crush?
Okay, 21 Savage and LMA. Both.
Okay. Can you tell us who your celebrity athlete crush could be?
Ooh, I have a couple. So definitely Joel Berry and Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers, and of course Steph Curry.
It's a good three, a good top three. Walk us through your ideal Valentine's Day date. What would that look like?
Okay, first he has to bring flowers and candy, and then he needs to take me out to somewhere that I want to go. Then we need to go somewhere else and then have a good time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
J-Boy here from Mountaineer Spotlight, and we're in the studio again this week with my co-hosts Gray and Austen, and we're talking basketball again. Men's basketball lost 2 again this week. They sit at 3-8 in the Sun Belt Conference. What are you guys looking for them as they prepare for Coastal Carolina this week on Saturday?
Jay, I'm looking for them just to change something up a little bit. I think, we had a lot of hope for this team last week talking about men's basketball, and, they went on that big win streak, then had to hit the road, and it was important for them to carry that momentum from the win streak onto the road and get those wins for their conference record to kind of stay afloat, and they weren't able to do that, unfortunately. They played 2 really good teams, and there were going to be tough wins to get, and App State didn't come out on top. So moving forward, I think Jim Fox really just needs to kind of reach his hand down into his bag of tricks and, switch the lineups up, try some different things out, see if they work, and maybe they do, and you can tack on to that win column this season, and then if they don't, you've learned your team a little bit better. There's a lot of guys from this squad coming back next year, and you can kind of just continue to maybe form some chemistry and build towards something next year, because their season right now, it's looking tough to really climb out of that hole they've gotten themselves into.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with Gray. When we were looking at this last week, we were super excited. Like we said, got the 3-game win streak and then lose the 2 this week. At this point, try something new. I mean, just really give somebody another opportunity. Isaac Johnson only shot the ball 6 times in 1 game last week. Give him some more shots. I mean, he's leading the Sun Belt in rebounds. This is a guy who can play. Give him the opportunity to score a little bit and do something different. I think that's the biggest thing is at this point, we're sitting in last place in the Sun Belt. We've won 3 Sun Belt games. At this point, we're getting to where we need to start looking to the future. And like Gray said, those younger guys, bringing in those guys, getting them the minutes that they deserve and that could make us possibly better next year in the future, really building up that team chemistry. I just think that at this point, that's really the only option.
Jay, I've noticed too that when guys like Isaac Johnson and Tyrell Johnson and some of the role players are able to put up, you said Isaac Johnson only had 6 shots in that game. When he's getting more like 8, 10, 12 shots a game, it's opening things up. You can see percentage-wise for some of the better players like Ronshad Shabazz, Justin Forrest, Tyrell Johnson, a lot of people would put up there. I think those guys' shooting percentages and their shot selections actually improve when you give some of those other guys more looks, because it's taking the defensive focus off of some of those main guys and allows them to kind of flow a little bit more easily in the offense than just kind of forcing the ball into your playmaker's hands every time,
Exactly. Like during that win streak, when we saw that we had 2 consecutive games where we had 5 guys scoring in double figures, we look back at these games we just lost, and Ron Chad's the only guy who's getting his buckets. And it's like Gray's saying, if you can get those puzzle pieces all together, the picture's going to look a whole lot better than if it's just 1 or 2 pieces. And by spreading that ball around, I really feel like they could have done a lot different in these last 2 games.
Absolutely. I like what you guys did there. We definitely got to get some scoring out of a couple of those role players. I like Adrian Delph's game a lot. He defends hard. He's their best perimeter defender by a mile. And I think guys like him are going to be important as they continue to push forward and fight in these next couple of weeks. Road wins, though, for this basketball team have been hard to come by. They are 1-11 on the road this season. They've had some trouble on the road. How do they get one? As they're going to play these next 3 games here at the Holmes Convocation Center. They'll have Coastal Carolina, then they'll play the Georgia teams and Georgia State, who is leading the Sun Belt, and then Georgia Southern. But how are they going to find some road wins after that stretch?
Well, I think the key in finding road wins starts at tip of the first game when they start at home. It's really getting into your stroke and figuring out what you're doing right so that it's easier to carry over in these longer road trips. We talked about it a little bit last week and how the Sun Belt is a little bit more difficult of a conference to travel in. You know, you can be traveling a couple hundred miles to go to these games in Texas and places like that. So especially when you're in a situation like Appalachian State is, you have to be in your groove before you begin these processes of winning. We had problems last season winning away games, and obviously it's something that really needs to be looked at, because when we go on these big win streaks and then we can't win a road game, it's obviously one of the larger issues. And so that's like I said, I just feel like if we get into the swing of things now and you really, really get what we're doing down in these next 3 games, I don't think that an away game should be out of the question for us to snag towards the end of the season.
Absolutely.
I think App tends to struggle on the road a lot due to the fact that they're a team that plays off of emotion, off of momentum pretty heavily. Some teams are, relatively consistent and they stay consistent, teams like Virginia. But App State's a team that will put together a 13-0 run and then the next possession let another team, run 3 threes in a row up against them because they struggle perimeter defense-wise. I mean, they're a team that definitely will rack up some points, and then points get racked up back on them later. And you can even see that within individual games, not just throughout the season. And I think on the road that becomes an issue for them, because at home it's easier for them to get that crowd support and get their feel in the game, and they're used to shooting buckets there at the home center, obviously. And then when they get on the road, it's unfamiliar territory. They've been traveling a lot. The crowd's against them. And when that momentum kind of gets sucked away from them a little bit, they play off of momentum. That's how they motivate themselves, and that's where they play their best, is when they're streaking with the flow of the game. Away, they don't get that. They have to make that for themselves, and it gets them in ruts, and it gets them shooting badly consistently over and over again. And then their perimeter defense struggles, so then other teams are hitting these big shots against them. And when you combine that with your inability to score yourself on the road, that's where you see these big separations in 1-11, like you said, Jay. Record for the Mountaineers away from home. I think a lot of that just comes from they have trouble making their own momentum and kind of fueling their own fire. It takes them a little extra, and that home advantage usually gives them that little extra push that they need.
Pretty consistent issues for them role players and perimeter defense, same thing. Women's basketball, on the other hand, was here at Holmes, the Conversation Center, for Thursday and Saturday. They had 2 big crowds, as they had the pink out on Saturday and they had the kids coming through for Education Day on Thursday. They grabbed a win on Thursday, won by a ton, and on Saturday they struggled a little bit and lost that game. What are we looking for as they continue at 6-5 Sun Belt?
Well, I think that this week the 1-1 stance shows what we can see from this team. It's the good and the bad. This team has a lot of positives. They have great chemistry. They can shoot the ball relatively well. Their defense is really quite stellar. And I feel like we also see the lowers when they get a little bit more inconsistent and things like that. So overall, when I look at the women's team, it just kind of seems like I can't wait for them to get further into the season and really start seeing what they do. Because right now it's just kind of like back and forth. It's kind of like a pendulum that we're not really seeing what they're fully capable of. I'd really like to see them put all their effort forward and see how far that they can go later into the postseason.
Yeah, with that 6-5 mark, they still sit at 5th. What are we looking for, Gray?
Well, I'll mention real quick that Thursday game. It was a noon game at the Holmes Center. So, a lot of people have class. A lot of people not really able to make it. I did make it to that game. And let me tell you, the Holmes Center maybe was louder Thursday afternoon for that women's game than I've ever heard it before. There were so many children there for the Education Day game, and they filled up half of a bottom deck there at Holmes. And every single time the scoreboard would tell them to get loud or the game would start to build up, those kids went absolutely crazy. And the women's basketball team fed off of it. They absolutely dominated on Thursday. Again, you talk about they do the fundamentals right. They did just that. They rebounded well. They passed well. They took smart shots. They really were using each other a lot on offense. The biggest thing that I saw as a difference maker between Thursday and Saturday for the women's team was their defensive rebounding. I think when they can stop other teams from getting extra chances and allowing them to kind of, if you're shooting 40% and you get your own offensive rebound and then you put it back up, that's another chance you give yourself to score, right? Mm-hmm. So the less chances you're getting, the less opportunities you're going to have to score the basketball. The Mountaineer women's team on Thursday got almost every defensive rebound that they possibly could have. They were dominant on the glass. On Saturday, they had to work a little bit harder for the rebounds. They gave up some second chance points, and I think ultimately that's what ended up hurting them in that game.
Absolutely, fellas. Good week in the studio. When we come back, we'll wrap up this week in Mountaineer Sports and crown a new Player of the Week. Stay tuned.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, "Read your lease. No pets allowed." My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
App State softball participated in the Elon Softball Opening Weekend Tournament this weekend, earning 1 win in 2 games of their opening day of the 2019 season. The Mountaineers defeated the Longwood Lancers 6-3 on Friday, but fell 10-2 against the Elon Phoenix later that day. On day 2 of the tournament, App State lost a tough game, falling 7-6 against Eastern Kentucky in the 10th inning.
The App State women's track and field team competed in the Darius Dixon Invitational this past weekend. Mountaineers Hannah Ratcliffe and Caitlin Butler took the top 2 spots in the 3,000-meter run, while teammate Emily Fetters took first in the 5,000-meter run.
The App State men's track and field team also competed this weekend, with the Mountaineers' Gable Dersham placing first in the 5,000-meter run at the Darius Dixon Invitational. App State will compete in the Sun Belt Championship in Birmingham, Alabama next week on February 18th and February 19th.
Now it's time for our Player of the Week.
Our player this week is none other than App State running back Jalen Moore.
Many remember the very last carry Jalen Moore ever took as a Mountaineer running back. It was a 27-yard run that not only ended in a touchdown, but also ended Moore's senior season with a brutal leg injury. After Moore's 2018 campaign was cut short, he dedicated himself to recovery in order to further his football career into the NFL. Now Jalen Moore has officially been invited to this year's 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. His career at App State is definitely one we will remember, Austin. So many impressive rushing statistics in his career here in Boone. One really that I noticed off the bat, he's first in yards per carry in App State football history at 6.3.
Absolutely, super impressive career. We could say that in 6 billion years of the earth being around, we got to be at App State when Jalen Moore played here, which is really special. 6th in rushing yards with 3,570 and 7th in rushing touchdowns with 33. Super impressive career. I enjoyed watching every second of this guy play.
And just an absolute playmaker. He had 17 games here with over 100 yards rushing. That's 6th in program history. I mean, the list goes on and on. He just did so much for this program. It was so hard to watch him go out the way that he did, but now he's earned himself a spot in that scouting combine, and we are going to be very excited to see where he goes. He's only one of 5 Sun Belt players to get selected for that combine.
It's not a bad list, especially considering he got hurt. Definitely impressive for sure, and we will definitely be rooting for him here in Boone. And I'm super excited to see where he ends up and where he's going to start his new career.
No matter what team he gets selected for, I'll be watching. I'll be rooting for Jalen Moore, no doubt. But that's it for this week's episode of The A-Game. I'm Gray Salter.
And I'm Austin Lobb. Join us next week. Thanks for watching.